Is the Switch 2 actually failing? In this video, I'm going to go over sales data and other metrics to determine if the Switch 2 is selling enough to make it successful. But before we get into that, I am doing a giveaway for a $70 eShop gift card. All you gotta do is comment down below and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. In the description down below is going to be a comment sheet showing all valid comments that are entered into the giveaway, as well as some other rules and regulations. Thank you guys so much for the support on the recent videos, and best of luck. I know what you guys are saying, but Crafty, the Switch is selling like crazy. I think we sold about 5 million in the first month, and you are not wrong. The Switch had an amazing first month in June, selling an estimated 5 million consoles worldwide, with an attach rate of 82% for Mario Kart World and 32% for the Switch 2 Pro Controller. By that metric, the Switch 2 is doing amazing, but a lot of people have pointed out that, of course, the launch sales don't really mean anything. Of course, Nintendo did a great job when it came to stocking the Switch for the launch to meet demand. They absolutely blew past expectations. The thing is, if the Switch was high in demand, wouldn't you think it would be hard to find one now? I think Nintendo did too good of a job when it came to stocking Switches, to the point where you could just find them anywhere. And a lot of people are also blaming Nintendo for artificial demand, where they are purposely holding back Switches at the beginning of the life cycle to maybe make it seem like it's more in demand than it actually is. And I think that is true, and we'll get into some data that supports that. But legitimately, I think that's just a good business strategy. But yeah, for example, this is New York City, but this is also for the area that I live in too. I have not seen a Switch out of stock in Best Buy and in Walmart. So if you really wanted to, like, get a Switch right now, you could just go online, buy one, or maybe even go to an in-person store and buy one there. And I think this is like crazy to think about, because if you think about console launches when it comes to the PlayStation 5, that you couldn't even find for like the first year. But with the Switch, you could do that right now. And it's like a good and a bad thing, because if you think about it, like, having a Switch 2 in stock everywhere is great for the average consumer, because they could pick it up whenever they want. But what a lot of people are saying is, like, since it's in stock everywhere, it wasn't as successful as the Switch 1. And I just think that is absolutely crazy to say, because we blew through the sales of the Switch 1 in the first year. This is just the first month sales of the Switch 2 in the first month. And this is worldwide. In Japan, we sold 1.6 million, Americas 1.9, Europe 1, and others 0.6 million. And that's a lot of consoles. And for example, the Switch sold 4.5 million in the first year, while we sold 5 million in the first month. And the projected sales for the Switch are 15 million for the first year. And I think that's definitely doable. But with recent numbers that are coming out, it's seeming like it might be a little bit of an overestimate. So we saw a significant drop off in sales after the first month of the Switch. And this is where a lot of people are getting the reasoning that, you know, the Switch 2 isn't as in demand as we all think. And again, like, I think, yes, people are right that it isn't as in demand, but also the value proposition for a Switch 2 just isn't there yet. So I think we are able to hit the 15 million in the first year, because the longer the Switch 2 is out, the more better of a value proposition it is to get the game. Because like right now, if you were to get a Switch 2, the only 2 games you really be playing is Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World. What if you're not a big platformer or, you know, a big kart racer? There's really no reason to get a Switch 2. Not until like Metroid Prime Beyond comes out, or even Pokemon Legends EA if you want that to run smoothly. And we don't even know about any other games yet, but I think once more games gets announced, like Animal Crossing 2026, a lot more people would want to pick up the console. I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting, is just like, yes, this is a brand new console and it seems to be in low demand, but also just because it's low demand now doesn't mean it's going to be low demand later. and that we are able to make the sales that Nintendo is projecting. But let's get into this chart really quick. This is for the weekly sales of the Switch 2 for June and then July. And then you can see that we dipped. We had a significant drop off from the last week of June to the first week of July. Almost like 50%, which is absolutely crazy. And then it goes even lower than that. But then it jumps right back up to 94, almost hitting 100,000. And this was because of Donkey Kong Bonanza. And what happened with Donkey Kong Bonanza was a little interesting because it seems like the rest of the Switches got released. So during this time, before Donkey Kong Bonanza, there was like, it seemed to be like a Switch 2 shortage almost, where it seemed like artificial demand almost, or like artificial scarcity. And then once Donkey Kong Bonanza hit, retailers just stocked the Switch like crazy. And it seems like Nintendo maybe like lifted some sort of gate to push as many Switches as possible. And then that's why we saw this jump. Assuming after this jump, it is probably going to go back down, and it probably will mediate around 50,000 Switch 2s per week until the holiday season or until another major game comes out, which I think is fair. And I think the holiday season, the Switch 2 is going to be a console that everyone's going to want. But yeah, this article by Event Hub says the Switch 2's week-over-week sales figures has seen a sharp decline in the latest report. Yeah, saying it's more than a 55% decrease in sales from the end of the first month and going into the second month. But then they do say, despite everything, it feels like the Switch 2 is still a contender for potentially becoming the highest selling console of all time. And again, there's a lot of factors leading into this on like what's going on with the sales and the overall stocking of the Switch. To me personally, looking from the outside in, someone that isn't really like looking at the sales data and is a marketing major, it honestly seems like the Switch 2 cycle or like selling cycle is a little artificial, but also healthy. Because again, the value proposition for the Switch 2 is not there yet. And I think these are all the early adopters for when it comes to the sales. And 5 million, close, like over 5 million, we're going to get the official numbers August 1st, is crazy for early adopter sales. And Nintendo was able to fulfill demand. So I think like when people are saying that it's low in demand, I don't think that's the case, saying low in demand, because again, 5 million in sales is pretty high in demand, but the Switch was able to fill that demand, and now we just have a bunch of stock on shelves until more games comes out that increase the value proposition to get more people in. And I think this is just going to be the cycle for the Switch now. We're going to probably mediate around 50K a week. And then whenever a big game comes out, maybe Metroid Prime Beyond. I think when it comes to August, we're not going to see a big bump in sales because it's Kirby and the Forgotten Lands and Drag X Drive. But once Metroid Prime Beyond comes out, especially with the Switch 2 controls, and then Pokemon Legends EA, there is a Switch 2 bundle. And then we got the holiday season, and then maybe a holiday game. Plus, we got Splatoon Raiders, Switch 2 exclusive, Animal Crossing 2026 on the horizon. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more out of stock Switches for people that are wanting games once they actually see them and get reviews for them. So is the Switch 2 performing poorly? No, it's not. The launch month of the Switch was great, and the median sales afterward is turning out pretty well. All we have to do is increase the value proposition for people to join the Switch 2 family, and then we'll start seeing more people join, and then hypothetically the Switch 2 stock. I think one thing I want to point out is Animal Crossing New Horizons back when the Switch 1. I think when the Switch 1 came out, we kind of assumed that was probably the most it was ever going to sell week to week, and we were just going to go on a decrease. But then Animal Crossing New Horizons came out, and then we got a massive spike in sales. I remember there being a time where you couldn't really even find a Switch for like the next 4 or 5 months. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same for the Switch 2. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Are people crazy? Am I crazy? I don't know. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much, Jesus and Evan, for being one of the first channel members. I'm Crafty Type 1, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.